the toe is pretty much right where it is now at the sill, and that's very good news. So that is very good news. Going to the timeline, and this timeline was from last week. I can say, based on information we've learned this morning from the Corps, this timeline will change for the better, and the official timeline will come to the public, out to the public, 10 o'clock tomorrow. So they will issue that, and it will be less of an impact on both of the New Orleans Algiers water plant, as well as the other plant, and the timeline will shift to the right. Once that report gets released tomorrow, everyone will see the timeline, and it gives a little bit more breathing room, and that would allow. When we say the team, the regional team of the four parishes, give you some time to formulate your plans, but also, with the data from the National Weather Service, they're anticipating more rain in the next couple of weeks. So, yes, sir.
But to be clear, that says we're not going to get to 250 parts per million at Carrollton.
That's right. What that is indicating that they're, and this is the Corps' model based upon a supercomputer up in Vicksburg in the ERDIC Center, is that the chloride levels at those plants that you see there will not exceed 250 parts per million. And that's going to get for the better once the official release comes out tomorrow.
Good.
And that's all good news. Next slide, and again, as we said, the tow is at 63.9, again, as a result of the increased flows down the Mississippi River, pushing that tow back, and that's really what we want to see. So other than that, this just shows a depiction of where the tow is in relation to our intake facilities. And the next two slides, I'll turn over to Steve, who will brief on the technical aspects of our plan. Steve?
All right, thank you, Ron. Just clarifying again, saltwater has not reached New Orleans. Water does remain safe for drinking and use for all purposes. And even if we did see elevated chloride levels, we would never, under any set of circumstances, stop producing water and keeping our system pressurized. As Ron has mentioned earlier, and we've talked about, the primary way out of this is to pray it rains on Ohio. And we've seen a fair amount of rain on Ohio and Arkansas, which is fantastic news for us. The sill has also made a big difference, but we do have options in place for both East and West Bank to make sure that if we do see elevated chloride levels, we're not affecting our customers adversely, because what we want to be able to do is dilute that incoming water so that it is the same makeup as it is right now. We want to keep those chloride levels at baseline. We did look at a number of different options before I kind of talk about what we settled on. We looked at reverse osmosis. The demands are just too high. Certainly for Carrollton, it could be a backup for Algiers, but it would still require a lot of RO capacity. So the best means of addressing potential chloride impacts would be to dilute water. Algiers produces on average 15 million gallons a day. Carrollton is on average about 150 million gallons a day. So those require two very different approaches for how we dilute that incoming water. Starting with the West Bank, both have been a key focus. The East Bank and the large pipeline that we'll talk about in a minute has taken the lion's share of the publicity, just given the size. But the West Bank has absolutely been a focus for us because that's where any potential chloride impacts would happen first. So we need to be sure that those measures would be in place. The Army Corps of Engineers has been telling us and told us for at least the week of the event that they would be able to supply up to 14 million gallons of fresh water daily. So they can get us to a place where they can basically replace our entire flow. So if it got to a place where the river was too salty to even dilute, we could take the entire production for the West Bank plant from the Army Corps, which is, yes.
Do they do that at no charge?
So the Army Corps handles the barging of the water from upstream to the intake locations. And we'll talk about that in just a moment on the fiscal responsibility, but it's a really, really good question. It's an important distinction because breaking out these costs and reducing that burden on our ratepayers is absolutely critical. So we'll have a figure in a minute for what the modifications at the intake look like, because you could just throw a pipe in next to the intake and pump, but you wouldn't have much control over what the makeup water, how that behaved and getting it into the intakes. So we have a plan in place. We have a set of documents out right now for a rebid for contractors to give us pricing on a cofferdam, a spud barge, and pumps. So that we are responsible for providing the barge and the pumps and the infrastructure to take the water off of the Corps' barges and put it into our system. And that's out right now. Bids are currently due on the 16th, so next Monday. And that is being done through a fully public bid process so that we ensure that we are getting the best price possible and making sure that FEMA and the state are going to be able to reimburse for those costs. For the East Bank, we looked at a number of different options, including barging is even if there were enough barges to bring 150 million gallons a day, the logistics of making all of that move and work is far too daunting. We looked at reverse osmosis again, too large. We looked at well water, and the concern with using well water is the unknowns about the chemistry. So if we had more time, I think that could be a viable solution to take a look at the chemistry of the aquifer beneath us, but given those unknowns, it was advised that we not take that action. We looked at using tankers. They make large tanker vessels that carry things like olive oil or wine or juice. That is a possibility, but you got to have enough of those tankers, between 6 to 8 of those, staging, setting up, and moving water. So it was just too logistically challenging for us. So the option that has been settled on is a pump and pipeline setup from around Kenner. There's a feature in the bottom of the river known as the Kenner Hump, where it is anticipated that the saltwater wedge will be stopped. It's a large natural sill, since we just learned what sills are about. Where historically the Corps has observed the toe of this wedge, because the toe has gotten up to this location before. We've never seen elevated chloride levels at our East Bank intakes, but the toe of the wedge has reached Kenner on at least 3 occasions, in 1936, 1952, and 88, but it's never gotten past that. This pipeline would be a single 48-inch line. We looked at options to use the smaller lay flat lines that Jefferson Parish has been using. And I want to emphasize that we have been working with Jefferson Parish throughout this entire process. The day the announcement came out, that Monday, Ron was making calls to his contacts over at Jefferson. We have met with them continually through the process. We're working on the permit applications together. So there's not this separate effort where we're each going our own way. We have had in consideration working together from the get-go. And the initial plan was to see if we could put a 60-inch pipe in that would convey enough water for both us and Jefferson. And the challenge with that is that there are only 2 factories, at least in North America, that produce that 60-inch pipe.
Wow.
And so in order to be able to lay down 12 miles of pipe within the 30 days or so that we have had, they couldn't produce that much HDPE pipe. So looking at the 48-inch pipe, it was either we laid 2 48s or they went with their lay flat pipe and we installed a 48, and we worked that together. And so that's where we have the situation where we have today. We've been assured that contractors can build this system within a 30-day turnaround. Currently, we've got substantially more than 30 days. And with the flows in the river, we've been informed by the Corps that we should have some breathing room there. So we do have a set of plans ready for bid. We have not stopped working on permits. That continues unabated. Rights of entry continues unabated, so we want to be certain that we have all of our clearances in place so that we can pull the trigger. But as we're talking about here in a moment, the long-term solution is important, and it's important to bear in mind that at an estimated cost of $250 million, we want to be sure that we're making decisions that are taking into account, of course, health and safety, but they're also financially responsible. So we'll see the Corps' projections tomorrow, and that will help us inform our decision on whether or not to pull the trigger on bidding that project as well. But the plans are ready. We've received clearance from GOSEP to bid those again. The Army Corps is working with us on permits and has been very helpful, so we don't anticipate any issues with that project either. The next slide is a graphic Obviously, this is not to scale, our intakes are not at the same place, but you see the general layout of how the dilution would take place. For the Carrollton setup, it's fairly straightforward. The pipeline from upstream would drop into what's called a cofferdam that's created by driving sheet piles, steel sheets into the bank of the river. And then that would blend with the water that's coming in from the river within that cofferdam using gates. And then we could take that water in through our intakes as we typically do. On the right-hand side, you can see the barge setup, and what we could add to this figure is that there would actually be two barges. There would be a permanent barge that we would have in place, and then the Army Corps' barge that would come and go, and then the pumps on our barge would pump that water into that cofferdam, which then it would mix and be pumped into our system. Next slide. So, yes.
That was the two systems on one slide, right?
It is, yeah.
Which is a little confusing, because the one on the left is, yeah.
You could draw a line.
Yeah,
Right.
we could split it down the middle. It is a little confusing. The two are not in the same location. So.
Where the public was confused, I found, was they thought the pipeline was meant to hook into our distribution system, and so we felt it necessary to kind of explain that whether it be by barge or pipeline, that the mitigation method was blending the fresh water with the.
Right.
But I take your point, and we can modify that.
You can maybe do.
Yeah, do two different
That'd make it
pictures.
pretty.
Yep. Yeah, so talking a little bit here about fiscal responsibility, the cooperative endeavor agreement, which is that formal agreement between ourselves and the state that will govern the reimbursement process, is in development. And we want to be certain, again, that all of our costs are reimbursable, which is why we're going through this public bid process to make sure we get the best price possible. And this is under GOSEP's advisement every step of the way. The cost share is currently at 75% FEMA, picking up 75% of the costs, and then there's a 25% local match, which GOSEP has offered to take at least 12.5%. We've also had discussions with the city about supporting us with cost share because, again, we don't have the reserves on hand to handle 12.5% of $250 million. So we have been working with folks to.
$30 billion or
I think the
something.
commitment was made by
Yeah.
the city to
Mhm.
fund the 12.5%.
That's correct.
So what happens with the rest? How do we fund it?
That is
It's a federally funded project with the 12.5% local share, and that local share is coming from the city.
Okay, got it.
If we actually go with through.
75, FEMA, 12.5 goes up.
Yeah, and for both options, right? For the dilution and for the pipes?
Yeah, we're not
Yeah.
assuming any of the cost outside our efforts that we're putting into that.
Yeah, the time that we've all spent internally dealing with it is the cost at this point. One thing, so are there any questions about that financial piece of it at this point? We do want to, Ghassan pointed out early on and has had the vision here to bear in mind the cost effectiveness and stability in the long term. We're talking about spending $250 million on piping and pumping that, if it's necessary, absolutely. If we're going to do it, we got to pull the trigger, it'll be funded. But that's a very large lift for something that we're going to use one time, essentially.
Maybe.
Maybe, right? And under FEMA's declaration, currently, this would be Category B, otherwise known as emergency protective measures, which by definition must be temporary. So we either have to remove the pipeline or purchase it when we're done, which is cost to us. So given that level of cost, I think it behooves us, and Ghassan has reached out to GOSEP. GOSEP and FEMA are more than willing to entertain some discussions on what sorts of things can we do permanently. And the timing is really good for that as well, because we received proposals, I believe, 2 weeks ago on our comprehensive water quality master plan, which is going to be that foundational document that'll tell us what we can and should do. So the timing is very good. But we need to be sure that we stay focused on not just this event, but being sure that we can do something meaningful for the future.
Yeah, it's great news. I think we've had informal conversations in which I personally express my desire to see a plan move forward for the sustainability of the entire system.
Yeah.
And I know for the last few years, we've talked about how critical it is to renew pretty much our entire system. And now that we have an additional curveball come in, it's additional arguments to really stress, we really need to rethink how we do this, and we need a budget to be able to accomplish it.
And it behooves everybody involved, including FEMA,
Yes.
to invest in permanent solution, because that obviously lessens their exposure in the future in case of a similar crisis where emergency is declared and they, front 85% of the cost.
Yeah,
So this is
we
a
can't
one-time, and just to be, as honest as we can be here in terms of finding a solution is going to take a while to be very thoughtful about what would it look like, and the implementation. So cost aside, there's an implementation process that will take, handful of years before it's all fully implemented.
Understandably so, but we don't want to keep patching our way into the
Yeah.
future.
Yeah.
Best time to start that project is today.
But
without a doubt.
But to be clear, at least for me, we would expand what we would normally do with our water treatment to modernize that, to anticipate a saltwater event in the future, as opposed to modernize it to take it to,
Yeah.
without thinking about that. I mean, it's adding a component to what we're
It would be
considering.
impossible now not to consider that, obviously, as part of the solution. But as you know, we've shared with you before, in anticipation of higher regulations and standards now from the EPA relative to other PFAS and such. This solution will solve multiple challenges in the future, and it will serve us for the next 52.
But we need to make sure we keep that 250.
We don't have any money in hand. Okay, so let's be cautious. about
Let it
that.
get away.
What we have today is attention, right?
Yes.
And buy-in that, yes, a permanent solution is the logical approach. So,
And Ron and Gassan and others, caught on to this early and have mentioned how important it is for not just us, but for the region. We have, we've got interties with St. Bernard Parish. We've got the potential for interties with Jefferson. We've got an intertie with Plaquemines on the West Bank. So those measures, if we do it thoughtfully and in a well-planned manner, is not just about Orleans, but it's the region
Right,
as a
regional.
whole, because the saltwater intrusion issue is very clearly a regional issue. It is not limited to any one parish.
I assume we'll take a look at well water. Baton Rouge, I think, gets their water from a well.
Yeah, I think
Wells.
that's certainly one of the things to take a look at now that we have some time to explore that aquifer chemistry piece. Yeah, I think that's certainly.
I have one more question, and that is this: what will be the trigger point to say we're not going to have to build the pipes?
We're keeping a very close eye on the timeline. So the Army Corps comes out every Thursday with a timeline, and they've also given Ron and myself their metrics for what they're looking for with the river. So I'll use the term cheat, but we get a pretty good idea of which way things are going to go by looking at where the tow is. That report comes out on Monday or Tuesday. We're looking at the level and flow of the river, so we'll have a pretty good idea.
So you'll have an objective idea of when this is what is predicted to be. Then we
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
We may have a reprieve, right, and we can slow down, but we'll always be ready
Yeah.
to.
I didn't mean that, but I mean at some point in time we'll decide the hurricane's not coming here; it's going somewhere else. Using
But this could be a
bad
recurring-
analogy, but
recurring situation.
a good year for those.
In a couple of years,
That's great.
not next year.
Does that
That
conclude the
this-
update?
Well, I've got just a couple of things. So corrosion control, I know there have been some discussions about that. This is another avenue that we are continuing with no hesitation at all. We're testing for chlorides and reporting that on our dashboard, which I don't know if you have all have heard about or seen the dashboard that we've got. Been very, very well received. That data is going up on a daily basis. Full battery of water chemistry tests are going to EPA and LDH. Corrosion sampling plan, we're going to start out. We have developed a pool of homes that have lead services incorporated. Those calls will start being made this week, because we do want to, regardless of what the timeline shows, we need baseline data. So before any potential chloride impacts, we want to be sure we've got baseline data. We've been told by LDH and EPA the best way to address this question of corrosion is to test early, test often, test throughout the life of the event. So that is continuing unabated.
we were running at about 50.
Yeah, we're at baseline is between 20 and 60 milligrams per liter, and we're right within that bandwidth.
Mhm.
Conservation tips, we've got these out for the public. Take shorter showers, wash only full loads of laundry or dishes. I changed the flapper on my toilet this last week. Make sure your showers and sinks aren't leaking. Turn off faucets. Sweep off our porches. These are things we probably should do. I don't know if I'm being a conservationist, but I haven't washed my car in a number of months, so I guess I'm doing my part already. And I also don't water my grass very often, so sorry. But yeah, and be thoughtful about how we water our plants. And those are some tips, and we'll have more of that. And then I'll turn it over to Grace, who just the communication piece on this, she's made all of our lives so much easier with that. So really, really good job on that comms team.
Well, I couldn't have done any communications effort without my subject matter experts. Throughout the event, Ron and Steve were invaluable. Ghassan, you were engaged so much as well. So thank you for everything. Each morning, we started our Joint Information Center call, which was, I mean, not only an operational regional effort, but really from a communication standpoint, I hadn't seen this level of coordination maybe since Katrina. You know, certainly we had gone through this with Ida, but this was a regional collaboration like I had not seen in my 20-year career. Each of the internal departments was so helpful. Water purification, of course, IT, bang up job. Our legal department, I can't think of a department that really wasn't touched. So internally, externally, regionally, we were all on the same page. The saltwater wedge dashboard really kind of was the star of the show.
That's cool.
I love that the public, was hungry for this data every day. We continue to promote this not only on our website, social media. We fielded certainly dozens of TV interviews, but probably hundreds of print and customer questions. From that, we had a really good bank of FAQs that was vetted by our agencies, including LDH, EPA. Again, it was so cool just working with the other parishes, seeing what they were getting, looking at Plaquemines, seeing what they were going through. So we had some go-bys. It was really an awesome communications effort that I couldn't have done alone. And I want to say, too, it was a really good investment for our CATS team with the corrosion control. And then HDR was, as always, just stellar with the graphics and the communication. So I appreciate everyone's support with those supporting partners. So what we're telling our customers, of course, is, you can prepare by staying calm, following those conservation practices when needed. As Steve always said, if you save a gallon, it's one less that we have to dilute. So those will become important if and when the surface water salinities become a factor for us. NOLA Ready, a fantastic partner, not only in coordinating that regional communications effort, but they've been pushing our talking points to customers and to stakeholders. We've been in lockstep with them to get people signed up for their tech system. And then the Louisiana Department of Emergency has a great website where they are also using our FAQs and showcasing our press releases, along with all the other parishes and all the other partner agencies. And that concludes our, I didn't even do my dash. So that concludes our presentation. Now over to Gray.
Communication's been great. That brings us now to our financial summary update for our CFO, Gray Lewis.
All right, thank everybody for your time and opportunity to give a financial update. We've been staying very busy with the emergency planning, all the things going on, all the major projects. Want to just provide some highlights on the August numbers, and then also this month we've been working on the Oracle software project, which is going to kick off next month. Very busy preparing for that, preparing the contract stage right now. And then also we started the budget season. So just as a reminder, y'all heard this will be 2024, the fourth year in a row without a rate increase, water and sewer. So just trying to keep mindful eye on all the expenses. But here in August, financially we show here the water and sewer revenues were stronger, 28.9 million for the month. We're at 187.3 year to date, a little bit ahead of the budget based on primarily miscellaneous other revenue. For drainage and other revenues, we're 75.3 million year to date in August, so we're ahead. That's driven mostly by some interest income with higher interest rates we've been earning. On the expense side, we're below our conservatively budgeted expenses, so we're 27.8 for the month and 223.9 for the year. So we have, several categories within that with estimated depreciation that's, varying from what we put in the budget, and some other categories. Energy costs have been lower overall, claims, medical claims, but the other side of that coin is, we have these emergency expenses that have come up like we've seen here recently, so keep an eye on that. And bottom line, at the end of August, if we had to add back non-cash expenses, we were 97.2 million year to date, which we use to service debt and for capital program. For cash collections in September, about 22.3 million, slightly above the year-to-date average. So that continues to be a focus area. Here on the dashboard, wasn't going to highlight too many line items, but we are above all our required covenants. Most noticeably, the customer receivables after the allowance is much lower relative to August of 2022. So overall, we're seeing similar trends throughout the customer numbers and the balance sheet and income statement.
Ray, sorry, I'm confused by something. Liquidity has gone from 2.5 to 1.5 for the ratio, and budgeted debt service has gone from 2.54 down to 1.8. What is, and then uncollected ratio 2.1 from 3.2 that's good there. But is there anything to be concerned about here in these numbers? The line 16, and I can't tell what number.
With salts and bonds, huh?
Yeah, we look every single month is measured at the end of the year. There's some timing differences going to happen between each month and period, the amount of payables we have for the liquidity ratio, but nothing of concern.
Okay.
Next, no major changes in our debt obligations. We continue to spend down the construction funds from primarily the sewer bonds. Next slide on capital spending. We had 11.9 million spent during the month of August, 4.7 million of new appropriations. We continue to receive the grant money on the JIRR and our public assistance grants. This was a change order, so there's really no significant activity that Ron's going to highlight on, so nothing major in that category. And then customer service, for the month of August, we have 51,708 customers served in the various channels. Average call wait time, 5 minutes, 35 seconds. So continue to see regular activity through our customer touch points. And then on this graph, just highlighting our payment arrangements and shutoffs or disconnect notices. So we continue to see, as you would expect, activity when customers receive those sort of as a last resort to turn off the water, see payments made, arrangements. As we continue to pursue our customers, we have, as you'll see here on the next slide, quite a few of let's just say here on the payments per month, the 114,592 were received in August, so that was a higher number, and also our bills issued were over 130,000. So we're seeing a little more consistency each month, which is helping the collection rate.
Before you leave that slide, excuse me, we have a stated goal of 50% actual meter reads, and we're whatever 60 of 160,000 is.
Yeah, that's accurate. In those summer months, there was less actuals that got into the bills.
It's a staffing issue in the summer, or?
Heat, it was, yeah, the number of heat advice weeks we had during the summer impacted
Okay.
stability to complete some of the routes.
So our goal still though is to hit 50% once it cools off.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we took a slight dip in capturing actual reads. I think it went down more like 3%, if I'm not mistaken. But but already rebounded back to the levels that we were at this month.
Okay, thank you.
And just to highlight our past due slide, we showed at the end of August, we were at 53.8 million, so it's down about 2.7 million from the end of July. And our accounts under investigation were 4,787 at the end of August, down to about 500. Continue to have that as a primary focus area to work through each of those situations and, respond back to the customer so we can get it resolved.
Ray, sorry, the total number of delinquent active accounts went up like 3,000 almost. What's going on there? When this is back earlier, but under monthly financial dashboard.
The dashboard.
Yeah, this graph should have the same numbers. You're comparing August of '22. Yeah, we were a much lower number. It's fluctuated between, I think this is one of the lower numbers I've seen, between 21.5, 21 and 22,000 up to 24, 25,000. But one thing I could attribute at the end of the summer of 2022, just the volume of people calling, getting more true-up bills, and then as we got into the fall, we expected to see a jump. But it's difficult to put your finger on exactly what makes a number move, but it's clearly over 20,000 customers. It's stayed at that level. So,
But what are we doing about it? I mean, are we investigating new initiatives, legal, otherwise? Because this is just not right for our customers. that pay.
Absolutely, this is the major topic with Ray, Jason,
She's
myself,
right about that.
and the council. Talk about internal policy in terms of what credit can be provided to a customer sort of right away versus having 50% credit for unexplained high bill and then recommending that they go to a hearing. So we like to make those type of changes to shorten the process and not have the customer waiting 3-6 months to get a resolution.
But the number of accounts in dispute went up 1,500 as opposed to 3,000. So there's something besides disputes that needs to be addressed, it seems to me.
It's customer payments or lack of.
Yeah, I mean, what do we do?
So
Do we have a task force or anything to start working on it?
Well, the more popular mechanism we have is payment plans, special payment arrangements. So every time we communicate with any of our customers who are struggling to pay, we offer a special payment arrangement. Sometimes customers agree to an arrangement, sometimes they don't, and sometimes when they do, it's not followed through. So they go off the special payment arrangement and then they come.
Yeah, we've talked about another project is a new software project for payment plans that are a little more flexible and modern, using texting and smartphones to get people set up. So right now the payment plans are a little more rigid. Pay this amount every single month. So hopefully we're scheduled to get that. It's called Promise Pay, the new software up in about the next month. But that's something that could attack this problem.
And it's not that we just talked about it, we're implementing that project the next month.
So this is a proven approach. Other cities have successfully gained more revenue by utilizing that approach, or following their lead, and hopefully will enjoy the same benefits.
We have a large part of the population that's struggling. I mean, that's part of the problem.
So that's all the highlights I wanted to just share about August. With some other topics, but happy to answer any questions.
Which brings us to the drainage millage reappraisal. Gray, you and Ron take that one on.
So The drainage millage, this is a quadrennial year reassessment, which sent out these materials ahead of time. This is a little bit unique, happens every 4 years, part of Louisiana Constitution. So this is obviously my first year to be involved, but historically, the last couple cycles, San Swinbank did the process, mandatory rollback, and then roll forward. So taking advantage of the additional tax revenue on the higher appraised value. But background wise, the Louisiana Constitution mandates this, and the rollback is Article 23B. If the property tax value as put forth by the assessor goes up, the taxing agency reduces their millage rate, and then they have the opportunity to apply for a roll forward, which the maximum amount will be to what it was prior to the rollback. This is describing what's required. There's a 2/3 vote of the board of directors, and then ultimately the city council will have the ultimate say based on like our other rate cases. So just give you an idea over the last few months what we've been doing. We got preliminary tax assessor values, and the board of review is conducting their final review, so they'll issue the final numbers. But in order to do this process, we have to publicly advertise, so that it's been done with estimated numbers. And again, just having that meeting set up so that we can explain to the public what the additional revenue is needed for, is what we're going to talk about here, and answer any questions. And we understand this is a significant increase in number wise. The last couple of years has actually gone backwards the other direction with the pandemic and then Ida. So as we look at the numbers, we just want to be very transparent and thoughtful about what the plans would be for that revenue. So here's our existing tax rates that you see, and we believe that this budgeted revenue would be very critical to fund key capital projects, invest in a infrastructure that's needed, and have more reliable drainage services. Supporting this viewpoint, we believe is all of these, rate consultants and other bodies that we've been talking about the drainage system and funding needs for many years. And the committee heard presentation from Ralph Tellis on the drainage stormwater fee. So anytime we look at the pro forma financial statements, we need to be spending more money on the drainage system in terms of capital investment. And Ralph Tellis explained that the stormwater fee is a common avenue that will gradually be introduced, particularly if the millage that expires at the end of 27 drops off. We've had talks, Cassandra, on part of the drainage consolidation task force, also identifying additional funding needs, and our rate study with Black & Beach in 2022, same results. So consistent theme across the board, that without additional resources, and even as we look at as short as 4 years from now, when this quadrennial process is happening again, that millage is allowed to expire. We will not, drainage system, which is a standalone system, will not be able to meet its obligations. So very critical revenue needs. This is the calculation that essentially takes what the rate was prior in 2023, take the new taxable assessed value, and then roll back. That's the first step. So there in the middle, the reduced millage would be 13.73. If that were basically kept stagnant without doing anything else, your budgeted revenue would be about $70.6 million. With this additional step, this ask to roll forward the millage, that sets it, gets it back up to the 16.23. We apply it against the new assessed values, and that produces 83.6 million. So that's additional revenue about 15.3 million, 22%. So that's as a result of the reappraisal of properties, and now we'd be going to our budget and specifically for drainage capital needs.
So what can you go back a little bit? So what we're proposing now is we apply the last column, and that needs to be approved, well, first by this body and then by city council.
Yeah, it's a two-step process. We're required to do the first step, roll back constitutionally. There's a separate resolution to roll forward. But you're right, that's the ultimate.
To get the bundle.
So on this slide, I'd like to just share, before I pass it over to Ron, the first column, just to explain and share with the committee, a drainage fund. Each year, we typically work with about 10 to 13 million of PAYGO capital. And what we do with that revenue is really support the SELA program. We have to spend close to 10 million just on SELA. That goes to pay back the Uptown project, 30-year payback. We fund the relocations of the current Algiers project. We pay program management fees to participate in SELA, very critical drainage project, but that takes up majority of our capital each year. The other, as you can see, that leaves, just a few $1-million projects and just not enough to really commit to any large scale improvements. But with additional revenue, what we show here on the right is some other project lists that the GSO's office has come up with, and pass over to Ron to share a little bit more about those.
Yeah, thank you, Gray. As Gray indicated, that the PAYGO 10 to 13 million, as you can see, ever since we've been doing the SELA projects, and the Corps has been paying all of our costs up front, and it's a 30-year payback. So we're paying a mortgage, and a large portion of the PAYGO capital goes to paying that mortgage back for the next 30 years. So the roll forward, the additional 15 million, as you can see in that last column, will allow us to start doing some work on our aging infrastructure. As you're aware, our drainage facilities, the drainage system is the largest system of all three systems, all of our drainage facilities, as well as our power system. All of that is inclusive. So what you're looking here, what we're proposing for 2024 for this potential 15 million, and as you can see, it's still not enough, it's 3.5 million short, is to do work on the discharge belt, the DPS-7, that's a critical project for us. Also, the various drainage pump station repairs and improvements at several pump stations that we put it in priority to do, upgrading, rehabbing screen cleaners, gearboxes, have to do the gearboxes, other improvements with the drainage facilities, and our ongoing effort to convert our 25 hertz constant duty to 60 hertz. So that's an ongoing effort. When you look at the underground drainage system, we want to go and start looking at rehabbing our old drainage box canals, some in the Uptown area that are over 100, 110 years old, that we need to do some work on rehabbing that. Again, 2.5 million, just a small portion of it, but we need to start somewhere. And some of the others, as you can see, our power systems with our feeder systems, we always have to upgrade our aging power systems. So with our 25 hertz system, and then the improvements of upgrading and rehabbing our backup generators for several of our drainage pump stations. Some of those generators are 35 to 40 plus years old. And so we're looking at that. So just a representative sample of what we can do with an additional funding. And then the last slide is pretty much just photos of the different facilities that are, and again, it's photos of aging infrastructure that you're looking at. DPS-7 is close to 90 to 100 years old. And again, DPS-15, and it's just a representative sample of what we need to do to take care of our assets and our facilities. Yes, ma'am.
Well, if I'm understanding this chart correctly, what it says is that if we don't roll forward, then once you take the FEMA payment out, I mean, not the FEMA, the SELA program, we have $3.5 million a year to invest in capital for the drainage system.
That's a stretch.
There you go.
All right, but 13.5 minus 10, 3.5 million for the drainage system in Orleans Parish capital.
Yes, ma'am.
If we roll forward, then you get 18.5 million to start doing things, and these are specific projects.
So if you roll forward, we have 15 million to use
Because we
toward
have,
the pot.
look at this pipe. I mean,
Yes,
that's
ma'am.
pitiful.
Yes.
that.
Even go back one slide.
Can we get a motion and then we can discuss it after
Okay,
the motion?
sorry.
Let's do it the right way. So I'd like a motion to approve resolution R 126/2023, rollback of sewage and water board millages. Oh, excuse me, we gotta go back, we don't have to vote on that one now.
We have to do that anyway, don't we?
Yeah. But let's do that and then we'll do the one to roll forward.
Yeah.
Is that all right?
Well, we're in the presentation portion now.
Oh, I'm sorry, I thought the presentation was over. Sorry. Well, don't listen to me.
There's one more chart.
Moving forward with that, that's.
No. I'm sorry, I thought that was the end of the presentation part of it. It's just-
Was it that you?
Excuse me.
Yeah, I was just
I'm gonna
wanted to
point out
answer
one
Ms.
thing,
Howard's
for
question.
Example, you know, if we have a,
I think it's plenty to say about it.
oh, I know, but just an example of how critical, when it happens, people would start questioning you. You have a power outage, right? And one of our generators doesn't work because we know it's fragile. And nobody's gonna think back, oh, what we do, we asked for money, we said no. I mean, it's, when it happens, it's real.
Right.
A generator is a backup power for, you know, the energy power. If you don't have that, I mean, that pumping station is dead.
I think we
That's
have an
it.
obligation
Yes.
to roll it forward.
Absolutely.
A financial
Just giving
obligation to
one
do it.
example of
I was just
how
trying to keep it
realistic
within the.
it is.
We have an obligation to roll it forward. Understood. But that decision will ultimately raise constituents' tax bill. What additionally are we doing to communicate our need and to address the fact that there are going to be a segment of the population that will obviously be distraught about the fact that it could have an increase in their tax bill?
That's a very great question. Once we have an official support, we can start communicating with the public that we are pursuing this formally. Because we can't get ahead of you, and obviously, you know, we're gonna have to go and make a case to the city council because they have the ultimate say. In the interim, we have an obligation to educate the public that we're doing it. We're not taking this decision lightly, but here are, you know, real examples of what we need to do to continue operating, you know, in a level of service that the city deserves.
And I understand that, but even at this point in time, I'm getting calls as a member of the board. Is this going to increase my tax bill? And what are you going to say and what are you going to talk about in terms of explaining that process and what's going to happen? So I just wanted you to know that even now, those calls are coming in.
Well,
And they're directed to me as a board member, and I'm sure to others as a board of directors. So it's a critical issue.
I want to bring something to our attention. I know that we've talked about this before, and in previous conversations, we talked that, first of all, money is not free. And part of the discussion of, okay, if we're going to pay it as citizens, why aren't there any other sources being evaluated? And the answer we got in another presentation is yes, there have been other evaluations, but it's not free money either. And there's consequences to, you know, first of all, they're not available. And even if there are, there's a cost to borrowing money. Correct? So all of this to say, I suggest that we integrate this into part of the narrative, that there's been a study of funding sources, and this is the most feasible one, from what I understand from previous presentations, and explain that. Right?
One thing to point out is this is 2.5 mils, which we haven't talked about. How much does it cost a person who lives in a house that's worth $100,000 or $300,000 or whatever, which is simple arithmetic. I don't like the mills very much, to tell you the truth, but we can point out what that amounts to as well, which we should, which we have examples of the house times 2.5 mils works out to be. Sorry.
Yeah, well, and there is information, right, available already.
Well, you can multiply right now. I mean,
Yeah.
To your point, we repeatedly share with you all the sources that we go after and maximize. I mean, we've showed that slide over and over again.
Yeah.
Obviously, to lessen the burden on our ratepayers and on our taxpayers, for sure. I mean, we go after money wherever we can find it. but those pots and buckets are not limitless, right?
No.
I mean,
Well-
and in some cases, they do cost more money. So-
The most obvious place for us to go is a rate increase, and we were told by the council, don't, it's a dead on arrival, if I remember the exact quote.
In other words, even if we pursue, and this is how I understand it, even if we pursue other buckets of money, it's gonna come at a cost and an interest that ultimately is gonna be reflected in our own,
Yeah.
somebody's gotta pay for it.
Okay.
But my
But-
suggestion would be that this narrative or information is brought again, so that we can answer these questions and explain why this is the conclusion and why this might be the best feasible course of action.
Probably the best feasible course of action is to have a drainage fee, and everybody pays, instead of just the people who are paying property tax.
Absolutely.
I don't think
Yeah.
these things are exclusive. I mean, it's not a question of this being the best source. This is.
It's at this
as-
point the only source,
This is right now, thus only source we have
yeah. I've been told by
available
the
right
council,
now.
forget it.
We can do this now or we lose a chance.
Well, and by the way, we vote to do it, doesn't mean it's gonna happen.
No.
Council has to
no.
approve that, so we'll see about that.
Is there a summary that we can make available to the public and then obviously ultimate to the council so they understand that there were steps to evaluate this? Yes, there are other options, but this is the most feasible one.
Right,
Yeah, I mean,
right now, it's not any other option, the
There aren't
council
any
said no
options right
rate
now.
increase, there's no other option for us to get more revenue.
But they would have to approve this, right?
yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
It's not we're evaluating 2 or 3 different sources of
It's-
funding and we opted to go this way. They aren't, we have limited or no ability to bond, correct me if I'm wrong. And there's really no specific funds out there for
For this.
drainage. It's very difficult to find that money. So.
It's just
they
lucky,
have one option.
it's just lucky that the value of the property, the underlying property in Orleans Parish has gone up, so that we could even roll it forward, which of course nobody has control over.
Mhm.
If that hadn't happened, we wouldn't be talking about this right now. But this is something that's come, that's available, that I feel very strongly we should avail ourselves of. I've used the word too many times, but everybody knows what I mean.
Are we going to, what is the
I
procedure?
don't want to do it wrong again, Jan, I'm waiting for the prompt from legal here.
Because I don't know when we're having the discussion. I mean, are we doing the rollback forward and then doing the roll forward?
We have to do it that way,
Motion and
right?
doing the discussion then?
Presentation, so we can introduce the
Okay.
2 resolutions if you like.
So why don't we do the resolution, resolution rollback sewage water board millages number R 126/2023. Is there a motion to approve that?
And that does not exclude rolling forward then?
It's two separate things.
You have to roll back. to-
We have to roll it back, we
I
don't have a choice.
make the motion.
And I second.
Second, is there we would have to do any kind of roll call thing on this, right?
You don't need to.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? That carries. That brings us now to 3B, Resolution 127-2023, roll forward of sewage and water board millages. And, Ray, it says for you to introduce it. What else do you have to do?
Yeah, just to share, it was just recommending the rolling forward of millages to maximum allowed
Okay.
rate, which is a tax rate prior to the reappraisal and rollback. The millages recommended to the Board of Directors and City Council a total of 16.23 mills, consistent with earlier increases in property values, allowed the agency to focus on the investment of critical infrastructure needs for the drainage system. Specific projects and investments in drainage, pumping and equipment stations have been identified to ensure the additional tax revenue is incorporated to already underway efforts to expand funding opportunity and improve services to our citizens. So we appreciate the committee's recommendation to move forward with Resolution 127.
And just to add a little clarity to it, that would be raising it from 13.73 to 16.23 or 2.5 mils.
Yes.
So just so
Which
people-
takes it to the current millage rate.
Yes, exactly. But I just want to say how many mils it was.
Okay.
Okay, is there a motion to approve resolution R 127/2023?
So moved.
And second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor, please so signify by saying aye. Aye.
Wait a minute, can we have a discussion?
Oh, sorry, yeah.
Well, I would like to insist that we have,
Oh, we've talked about it a lot. Is there any discussion?
so the motion motion passed, right? And I would like
No,
to.
the
Well, that
motion's on
passed
the,
yet.
no,
Oh.
no, the motion is on the table.
Okay.
Discussion.
Okay, and what I'm looking at here is, when you take out the CELA money, we have $3.5 million a year to invest in capital improvements for the system in the city without which we cannot exist. That's the bottom line.
It is.
If we, which is almost mind-boggling, it's such a small amount for a city that's, partially below sea level. If we roll forward to what is now the existing rate, we pick up another $15 million, which we can use for certain projects. My suggestion
Pick up
is
12
that,
So we're gonna pick up 2.4 because of organic growth. We pick up actually 12 by 12.8 is what it is.
okay, then my suggestion is that when we do this, we make, if we go forward with this and we make a point, I think we need to make a point to the public that after CELA, we have $3.5 million to invest in the most fundamental infrastructure in the city. We roll forward, we have X million, and this is what it's going to be used for. I want that stated very clearly. Not that we have projects exceeding or anything like that, which is kind of the way it is now. I think we have to be very, very direct. If you roll forward, this is what you get. If you don't roll forward, you don't get it. And it matters. I'm almost,
It's
for me, I
ridiculous.
can't vote against rolling forward because I think it would be violating my duty to every
Yeah.
citizen in Orleans Parish. That's-
Well, and that's what I wanted to add too, that I would insist that we have some sort of communication to explain why this is happening, that there are no other options to find in this. And if we don't do this, we're gonna be vulnerable in the coming months, come hurricane season again.
More vulnerable.
More vulnerable.
Well,
We're gonna be
How to maybe, Ron, if you go back and then to the, no,
Look at those pipes.
the pipe picture, that, Ron, can you explain what is happening in DPS seven? What's actually happened beneath the water,
Yeah.
right, with the piles? and-
Yeah, water line, these are discharge tubes where we discharge water from the suction side into and that's the lake itself, the Orleans Canal. So the discharge tubes are corroding, rusted below, and any major repair, major improvement on that. The $1 million just, we would call it seed money to start that with a design. You'd have to actually coffer dam each one of those existing discharge tubes off to do that construction, because you can't close off the
Right.
whole bay. And again, that is a major project, and that project probably can cost you between $3 to $7 million just to do all three of those discharge tubes, or more than that.
37 with an M, million.
Yes, 3 million, yes, but again, that million is to start that design process, that preliminary process to do that. But that's DPS seven,
What's
and
the risk though? What's
But for the,
risk
yeah,
if we
for
don't
the,
have-
so for the, I don't know what DPS 7 is. I'm ashamed to admit that. I hope that's something.
it's a drainage pump station next to I-610 by City Park. You
Okay,
can see it
so
over.
suppose those fail. What happens then?
We can't pump,
So what happens then?
then the city floods.
Okay, so that's the, that's the thing.
Oh,
is, you know,
I mean,
Those would
but that's
settle.
obvious to you, but maybe not everybody knows that a
Right.
discharge
What's
bell.
the risk if we're not taking action?
Well,
It would go down.
that's correct. You're, every year with aging infrastructure, and I've said it before, when you're dealing with aging infrastructure, 80 to 100 years old, you have to put money in it to rehab. And so we have to stop, say, I'm pushing the can down the road, because as we indicated, with the CELA program post-Katrina, it was a blessing for the federal government, but we have to pay that percentage back, and the only way we can afford is pay over 30 years. Now we're paying a mortgage. So we pay that mortgage on CELA, that's less money we put toward keep fixing the other facilities. Hence the reason why we need this additional money to keep putting into our drainage system.
We're underfunded. I mean,
That's correct. That's just the bottom line.
Massively underfunded, but I just want to make sure people realize if you don't fix these things, the city could flood.
Right,
It's
and-
not just a,
And it,
Cosmetic
discharge
thing.
tubes, you see DPS 15, again, it's still operational, but it's just aging infrastructure that needs to be replaced and upgraded.
Do we have already those projects assigned and or do they have to be approved?
Those projects are in every capital budget every year. There's not enough money to move forward with it. For the
Okay.
last 10 to 15 years, these projects and many others are in that capital budget.
Been deferred.
We just defer it every single year.
How old is this thing?
DPS 7 is probably close to 100 or more than 100 years old.
Hey, let's put that out.
Yes, ma'am.
Well, I guess my question is there a level of priority? So we have this list of projects.
Yeah.
How do we prioritize? Because even with this, there's not gonna be enough funding
That
to.
that
Well,
reflects
they do
our
that.
priority by identifying those would be the first project that we
That's
would
correct.
use.
That sheet?
Utilizing the new revenue.
Okay, so those have already been prioritized, that's what I'm saying.
From our end,
Yes.
if we have the numbers.
Yes. Yeah, so to Director Howard's point, that needs to be public, so people know what's at risk.
State what the
Yeah.
ramifications are. if
Yeah,
we
oh,
do
What
yeah.
are we doing and why does it have to, why?
Why does it matter?
Why does it matter?
Yeah.
I mean, when you tell me the city's gonna flood if you don't fix something like that, I mean, people don't know that. They don't think about it.
I think people kind of don't believe it. We've been saying it's old for a long time.
I
We've
know,
been looking at it.
but you can, I mean, look at that. You put out a pic, that's almost disgusting.
And then again, this is, talking about our oldest system is the drainage infrastructure, but again, it's a very old system, and that's where the funds are needed, to bring them up to par.
We're paying now. All right, is there any more discussion on this? Janet?
I'm sorry, I talked too much.
No, you didn't. Everything you say makes perfect sense, but I just want to make sure I don't cut anybody off again. All right, is there any public comment? No public comment. All in favor, please so signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No opposed. The motion carries. Thanks, everybody. It's a great discussion.
And just for record, we're gonna come back with the same presentation, maybe a little bit more, some modification for the full board, because the board, we need majority vote.
Right.
Two-thirds, right?
Two-thirds.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so we're voting to recommend to the board
Yes.
to vote.
So to Director Howard's point, what happens if we don't do this, it really matters. And I
We'll
don't know.
spit it out more.
Yeah.
clearly, yeah.
It's a dramatic thing. It should be presented as such, because it really is. Okay, item 3C. So we are starting on I don't even know, Greg, would you introduce 128-2023, which is the 9th supplemental sewage service revenue bond resolution authorizing the issuance of sewage service revenue bond series 2023. And I see we have Mr. Akers here. Welcome, Jason.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jason.
Okay. Thank you. Jason Akers, Foley and Udell. Happy to be here. Maria Ozan, my co-bond counsel, had a conflict and couldn't arrive today. I'm not going to read the entirety of the 9th supplemental resolution to you. I'll spare you that, but we will I'll briefly explain to you. This is final approval actually, of another DEQ loan, a loan from DEQ's State Revolving Loan Fund. This will be the fourth that the Sewage and Water Board has outstanding for the sewer program. Did loans in 2011, 2019, 2021, and now in 2023. You may recall over the summer, you actually adopted a resolution that gave preliminary approval to $80 million in sewer revenue bonds through the DEQ program. This is the first tranche of those. This is $31,525,000. You have an approval from DEQ to move forward to close. And this 9th supplemental resolution is your last step from the Finance Committee and then the board to approve that closing. State Bond Commission has already approved, and once you approve, it will go to the City Council in early November, and then it'll go back to Board of Liquidation for final approval also in November. Our target is to close by the end of the year, which would be in compliance with the DEQ requirement. This at $31,525,000 will be used for funding consent decree projects. This is the final DEQ loan for funding consent decree projects. The other DEQ loans are going to go for other purposes, and we'll talk about those whenever that time comes. We want to focus on this being for consent decree projects. These are funded on as-needed basis, so you will begin to construct the project. As you have construction draws that come due, you will make a requisition to through the Board of Liquidation to DEQ. They will fund the portions of principal as needed on an as-needed basis. The good part of that is that you interest only accrues on the amount that is actually advanced to you. The other good part is that the interest accrues at a fixed rate of 0.45% plus an additional 50 basis point administrative fee. So for a net all-in rate of 0.95%, I want to stress the zero that came in front of that again,
They call it what you get.
0.95%. It is fixed for the 22-year life of the issue.
Fantastic.
Yeah, I want to, you saw the financial projections earlier. These bonds will be on a parity with the bonds that are outstanding already. The multiple series of bonds, there are actually 9 other series, 3 other DEQs, and then 6 that are on the market. And we've been working with PFM to ensure that you will meet the parity coverage tests. And just to provide you the basic information on that, you have to have a 1.25 times coverage to be able to issue parity debt. And based on the 2022 fiscal year audited information, post issuance of these bonds, you will have a 2.17 times coverage. So you're almost double the coverage requirement as necessary. So you easily fall within the requirements for the issuance of additional bonds on a parity with those that are outstanding. I'm taking a little bit more time in explaining because unfortunately next week at the actual board meeting, that is our National Association of Bond Lawyers annual conference. I know that sounds really exciting and you all want to be there. Made fun of by an engineer. So unfortunately we will not be able to be here to make the presentation. So certainly happy to answer any questions you have, but if any questions arrive from board members now up until the board meeting next week, we are available. We are happy to answer them for you in advance also.
Well, will Gray present at the board? Okay.
I have a question. Disclosure under Rule 15C2-12 is,
Yes.
we're not really thinking about putting these out in the primary offering, are we?
No, we actually state in the resolution that is not applicable here. Only if DEQ decides to use the debt service to leverage its own bonds, would you then have a disclosure obligation, but it'll be no different than the disclosure obligations you have for your other market transactions now. So, and that would be that's a decision DEQ can make on its own without further approval.
But it doesn't change anything.
It doesn't change anything for you, no.
Has it been presented? May I have a motion to approve resolution R128, 2023?
Second.
Been moved and properly seconded. All in favor, please so signify by saying aye. Aye. Was there any public comment? No, just breezed right by. I can't get it right today. Oh, okay. All right, sorry about that. Resolution R129, 2023 is a correction to authorization for professional services contract between the Water Board and Application Software Technology LLC for financial software and services. Right.
Thanks, Chairman. This is just correction to the earlier version of our resolution. It's been corrected to reflect the proper $280,000 of software as a service maintenance fee, including ancillary other software. Approximately $79,000 was omitted earlier. So this resolution clarifies and will align with the contract that's being prepared that I referenced earlier. So thank you for the committee's vote to recommend resolution 129.
Okay. Is there a motion to approve resolution R129, 2023? It says something different here. Is there a motion to approve that? Second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? Is there any public comment? All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Is there any opposed? The motion carries. Thank you. Bringing us to 3E, Resolution R123, 2023, authorization for renewal number 2 of the professional services agreement between Sewage and Water Board of New Orleans and Avenue Insights and Analytics for Information Systems Management. I've got here Kathy Smith with the IT department is going to introduce that. Is that right? Thank
Good
you.
afternoon, everybody.
Afternoon.
Avenue Insights provides our staff for our IT department for O&M new development and emergency services, as you all know. Sewage and Water Board staff is recommending approval of the second of 4 available renewals for our professional services contract with Avenue.
Okay, may I have a motion to approve resolution R0, I'm confused here. This is 123, 2023.
Where are we?
Yes, that's correct.
No, what I'm reading is not right.
Right.
Okay, so is there a motion to approve it?
Just a, yes, I'll make a motion to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, is there any discussion, Janet?
There's an increase in the price, right, of about 500,000?
Yes, so
Okay.
that actually encompasses the 5 additional positions we added earlier this year, continuing into next year.
Is there any further discussion on that? No? Any public comment? In that case, all in favor, please so signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. Thank you. We now have General Superintendent's recommendations. Ron, if you would proceed, please.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chair. We have 5 total items in 3 categories. First category is contract awards and renewals. I'd like to take first 2 in global. First resolutions are 109-2023. That is the award of contract 2030253. That's Carrollton Basin number 12 sewer rehabilitation contract. That's in conjunction with the overall EPA consent decree program. 2 bids were received on September 21st, 2023. The lowest responsive bid was from BLD Services LLC in the amount of $2,789,212. GSO's office is recommending, is asking for recommendation of this award. Second award is relative to Resolution R1102-2023, and that's the award of contract 30254. That's for Carrollton Basin number 13 sewer rehabilitation. On September 14th of this year, 3 bids were received. The lowest responsive and responsible bid was received by BLD Services in the amount of $4,373,468, and the General Superintendent's office is recommending acceptance of this bid. And that concludes the contract awards renewal section.
In that case, may we have a motion to approve contract award resolutions 109-2023 and 110-2023 between the Sewage and Water Board and BLD Services LLC.
So moved.
Moved, is there a second? Moved, properly seconded. Is there any discussion? Is there any public comment?
No public comment.
Thank you. In that case, all in favor, please so signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Bringing us now to 3H1, contract amendment.
Yes, sir, that's one item in contract amendment, Resolution R107-2023. That's contract amendment number 5 to the agreement between the Sewage and Water Board of New Orleans and Neil Schaefer Incorporated for the design and engineering services for repairs to the river intake fender system. This is a no-cost time extension only. For this contract is to extend the time from November 20th of this year, 1 year, to November 20th of 2024. And General Superintendent's office is requesting acceptance of this amendment number 5.
Thank you. Is there a motion to approve contract amendment resolution 107-2023 between the Sewage and Water Board and Neil Schaefer Incorporated?
Moved.
Moved. Seconded. Is there any discussion? Is there a public comment? No public comment. All in favor, please so signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Bringing us to 3D through H, 2 contract final acceptances be taken in global.
Yes, sir, final acceptance, and we'll say for item J, there's a typo. When we get to item J, resolution 112, the name of the contractor was incorrectly typed on the resolution, and I will state what the contractor's name is when we get to R112-2023. First resolution is R111-2023. That is the final acceptance for contract 8165. That is the acceptance and closeout of this contract relative to repaving of open cuts and sidewalks and driveways at various locations throughout New Orleans. We're asking for final acceptance on this contract. The next contract for final acceptance is contract 2159, Associated Resolution R112-2023. Final acceptance and closeout of this contract relative to the water main point repair, water service connection, water valve, and fire hydrant replacement at various locations throughout New Orleans. In that first whereas, that's where the typo was. The whereas on March 30th, 2022, Sewage and Water Board into a contract 2159 with Bow Brothers Construction Company Incorporated and not Wallace C. Drennan. So that's the typo, just asking the board that the adjustment in that is Bo Brothers Construction Company, LLC, and not Wallace C. Drennan. That's where the typo is. And the General Superintendent's Office is asking for final acceptance of this contract, 2159.
Thank you. May we have a motion to approve contract final acceptance resolutions R 111/2023 and R,
As amended with his type.
I was gonna amend it on the run.
Okay.
R 111/2023 and R 112/2023 between the Sewage and Water Board and amended to state Bo Brothers Construction. How's that? Okay. Is there a motion? We're getting close.
Second.
Okay, is there any discussion?
Yes. Can you explain the first contract that went down 75%?
And the final acceptance?
Yeah,
Yes, that is, let me get back to my notes. That is contract
it's the one for street and sidewalk repair.
8165?
Um,
Contract 8165, yes.
1/11/2023.
Oh, that's right, 8165, 11120, it went down, by that amount, we had issues with that contractor, about a year and a half ago.
Okay.
Relative with pavement, we did meet with the contractor, he had 2 paving contracts at that time. So he adjusted of doing more work in his other contract than this one, and that's how we resolved that. Since then, the contractor has improved. It's work activities associated
Okay.
with the paving contract.
All right.
And that's why it went down 75%.
Thank you.
Is there any other discussion? Any public comment?
No public comment.
I just want to note that the DBE portion, first time in a long time, the projected goal was achieved. Am I right or am I wrong? So it was 36 point whatever,
Achieve it all the time, don't
and
they?
that was achieved, right?
Mhm.
Okay. Okay. I haven't seen that in quite a while.
Really?
Any further on that? Any other discussion? No. And no public comment. All in favor, please so signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much. We have FEMA and EDBP information items. October reports are in your package. Are there any other public comments?
No public comment.
If there are no other matters, I'd love to entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move. Second.
Then moved and seconded promptly. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thanks, everybody. Sorry about my mistakes.